Welcome to Future States, the podcast where technology, law, leadership, governance, and society meets. I'm Emmanuel, and today we are discussing one of the most important questions facing leaders in the age of AI. Are we governing AI, or is AI beginning to govern us? AI is no longer a future possibility. It is already inside the tools organizations use. It's also part of the system that supports our decision, and of course, many of the platforms people rely on every day. It's been baked into it that it is difficult for you to actually know if AI is making a decision for you. The challenge now is that many organizations are adopting AI faster than they are building governance, accountability, ethics, security, and even the leadership structures needed to manage it. My guest today is Toluwani Akineye. He is a cybersecurity, AI security, and GRC leader with over 15 years experience helping organizations across Africa and Europe turn security, risk, compliance into measurable business advantage. He's also the author of Governing AI Before It Governs Us, a book that challenges leaders to move beyond AI enthusiasm and take deliberate ownership of risk, accountability structures, and governance framework that determines whether AI serves or undermines their organization. I have today with me Toluwani. So Toluwani, welcome to the Future States.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. It was a pleasure to come on the podcast. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you very much. I've tried to introduce you by looking through your biography, but tell us briefly about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Toluwani as introduced, and thank you for the introduction. Yeah, I've had the privilege and opportunity of having a career in information security, cybersecurity that has spanned over 15 years. I've had stints working in IT audit functions, IT risk functions, cybersecurity, security operations center, and AI governance, AI security. I've also had works that have spanned through financial sector, payment industry, and I'm currently a consultant. I wear multiple hats advising various sectors of the economy on cybersecurity, AI governance, risk management. But very important to my heart is governance, because I believe governance drives all the decision. Governance drives how technology responds and the outcomes it provides.
Thank you very much for that introduction. What I want us to do now is to start with the book. So in 1 or 2 minutes, what is Governing AI Before It Governs Us really about?
Okay, so governing AI before governance is, in practical terms, it means how leaders, decision makers can put structures, policies, and accountability, as well as oversight in place before AI systems are adopted, deployed, and scaled. It means defining what AI system is allowed to do, what it must never do, who is responsible for AI outcomes, how will AI outcomes be monitored, and when should it be stopped. So it is about asking powerful questions before deployment. What problem are we trying to solve with AI? Why is AI the right solution? Who will be affected by our decisions, by the decisions of our AI tools? What data are we using to train it? Can we explain the decisions our AI systems are making? How do we know if it's doing the wrong things? And ultimately, who is accountable if our AI infrastructure causes harm? When are we going to review it? And what can make us switch off? So it is about governance in practice. And governing AI does not mean slowing down innovation. Governance in AI is not anti-AI. It is pro-accountability. So it is a call for leaders to govern AI before AI starts shaping decisions, starts shaping our institutions, and starts shaping the society we live in without proper oversight.
Yeah, I agree with you that we need to govern AI before it governs us. But I would like you to clarify, why did you feel that this book needed to be written now? Because this is a challenge that has been boiling for a while now. But why? Why did you write your book now?
Okay, so I wrote this book because I have a compelling me to tell my stories from practical examples or practical experience from the field. Yeah, obviously, this is not the first book about AI governance, and this is never going to be the last book about AI governance. But then I've had opportunity to work across different sectors, working with business leaders, working with business executives, working with technical teams, and also other teams involved in AI development, management, and scaling. And what I've experienced in the last couple of years is a governance lacuna. So what we see in practical experience is that, taking an analogy of building a car, we're interested in building a car that is all sleek, can move very fast, like a Formula One car. Nobody is looking at braking systems. Nobody is looking at other controls. Yeah. So the idea is not to build a car that is all brakes, because the car is moving nowhere. And it's very disastrous to have a car that is all accelerator and no brake. But I believe an efficient and a safe car is going to be one that's got a good accelerating system and also a good braking system that applies caution when there is need for caution to be made.
What do you want me to feel after I've finished reading this book?
So first thing I want you to feel is first and the most important thing is to understand that the accountability for AI cannot be outsourced to other departments within the organization. What you see in practice is that AI governance is an afterthought, and most times it is outsourced to technical teams. And these are teams that are not well skilled and versed in governance, and they don't have the responsibility, or they don't have the skills to implement governance. So the first thing is to understand that the bulk for AI governance stop at the board or the highest decision-making level, and also to explain AI risk in non-technical terms, because the idea is not to make the board and the management team AI technical experts. It's for them to understand AI risk in non-technical terms and see how they can govern AI responsibly with this non-technical knowledge, so that they can drive compliance across technical teams, legal teams, and all the teams involved in implementing and scaling AI within the organization.
What I find powerful about the title is that it suggests urgency, and you make it clear. It's not saying AI might govern us one day. What it's suggesting is that AI is already shaping decisions, choices, processes, and even opportunities. And the question is if leaders have caught up. From my own personal experience, I can see we now have so many AI products, not really AI products, products that we use on our day to day, where AI has been introduced underneath. Even though we still use this product, we don't have the understanding of what particular aspect of that product AI is shaping or where AI has been used. So in that case, we need more clarity. So the question is no longer whether AI is coming. I think you've established that clearly. The question is whether anyone is governing it the right way. So in your introduction, I want to bring us back to that. You describe AI as the machine that's moved in without knocking. We also talk about a car. What do you mean by that? I wanted to expatiate on that.
Okay, yeah. So the machine that moved it without knocking. From experience, there are two major scenarios through which AI moves into organization. One is deliberate, the other is surreptitiously. For the deliberate part, a board member, a CEO goes to a conference, and in the conference, AI vendors come to make some presentation, tell them how AI can improve efficiency, reduce costs, strengthen fraud detection, support healthcare, improve customer service, and transform business operation. That is very fine. So the board executive has a fantastic weekend. On Monday, it gets to work, calls in the CTO, calls in the CIO, calls in all the management team, and it gives a matching order that, look, we need to implement AI because it's going to reduce costs and improve efficiency. And reduction in costs and improvement in efficiency is the key success factor that drives the implementation. That is on one hand. On the second hand, there are organizations that are behaving like an ostrich, that they bury their head in the sand. AI is already in every organization, even if we choose to deny. Most of the tools we use, productivity tools, work processing tools, they have AI embedded in them. We find organizations where staff have already they have already unilaterally bought paid versions of these tools to improve their jobs. And we call these concepts shadow AI, where the organization is not even aware that AI has surreptitiously moved into the processing and the business operation. So these are two different scenarios that organizations face. Mobile phones, it took mobile phones 16 years to get 100 million subscribers and users. It took 7 years for the internet to get to 100 million subscribers, but ChatGPT recorded 100 million subscribers in 2 months. We can see that AI is moving at a speed nobody envisaged.
Yeah.
And because of the kind of decisions it's making, we need to wear our thinking caps and we need to govern it, because it is in some ways governing the way we live, how we make decisions, and even the kind of things we think about.
This is one of the most important leadership blind spots. Many boards are still debating whether to adopt AI, while staffs are already using it to draft emails, summarize reports, analyze documents, and support a lot of decisions within the organization. So I want you to expatiate more on how has AI entered organization through everyday tools like emails, documents, spreadsheets, search, analyst, and all those tools that you mentioned briefly there. And after that, I would like you to tell us about the danger when leaders think they have not adopted AI, but employees are already using it.
So, surreptitiously, AI is everywhere within business operations. Any organization that employs technology to provide services to customers have AI in some way, shape, or form. Most leaders, so if you speak to most leaders, they tell you, oh, we don't have AI in our organization because we have not officially implemented AI tools. But AI tools have come from the back end through the tools they use. And also, some staff has also gone out of their way. Software developers, even regular staff that are drafting emails, customer care, support staff, they have gone out of their way to pay for some of the popular AI tools to help them drive efficiency in their business operation. So what is required of business leaders really is to wake up and smell the coffee. AI is already within the organization, if you admit it or not. And we now have to start setting up governance processes to first determine, as an organization, what do we need AI for? How can AI support our business processes? And beginning to determine the type of AI we need.
I would like us to talk more about the danger when leaders think they've not adopted AI, but everyone within the organization are already using it.
Yeah, there's a lot of problem in that, because most organizations are regulated based on the sector they are. And different organizations keep different kind of data, different kind of information. So we've seen situations where a staff who has not been trained on AI best practices, who have not been trained on AI ethics, just want to draft an email. Then it copies company data that could contain personal identifiable information, could contain company private information, dumps it into the AI just for it to help structure the email and put it in a very good readable format. So number one, we've seen a lot of privacy breaches along that as part of the downsides of shadow AI. Then also, we already see automation bias, because again, some of these staff or some of these business operators, they don't understand that AI output might contain errors. They take AI as the gospel truth. So they just make business decisions based off the output they get from AI tools, which again is going to significantly affect the outcome of businesses.
Okay. Now let's talk about shadow AI. What is shadow AI and why should leaders care about it?
So in simple terms, shadow AI is not acknowledging that AI is used within an organization when actually is in use, when we don't have track of the AI tools that is being used within an organization.
So why is shadow AI different from traditional shadow IT?
Yeah, so shadow AI is different from traditional shadow IT in the sense that AI itself is unique. AI is non-deterministic, and AI drives on data. So for shadow IT, for most of the tools you have in shadow IT, let's say applications, these applications are deterministic. That means you put an input, it does a processing, and you get an output. So there's a range of outputs that we expect, all things being equal. But because AI is non-deterministic, AI involves the use of data, constantly feeding of data. So if you have shadow AI within your organization, number one, you can't track the extent of data that's being fed out of your organization, and you don't know where this data is being stored. Some organizations have some jurisdiction requirements in line with GDPR and other data protection and privacy requirements, where data is supposed to reside only in some jurisdiction. But with the use of AI, this data is being fed into different tools and is moving out of their jurisdiction, which again gives some regulatory and legal infractions to this organization.
As you're answering that, I want you to also add what happens when staff paste sensitive information into public AI tools.
Okay. Yeah. So when staff mistakenly or either intentionally paste company confidential or customer confidential information into private, so the key thing here is that that information has moved out of the control of the organization. And most times organizations have non-disclosure agreement and they have privacy agreements for this data that is kept in their custody. So it is a breach of privacy, is a breach of legal and regulatory requirements.
Some organizations respond by banning everything. No ChatGPT, no Gemini. How should organizations respond?
Yeah, so banning everything outrightly is not a good approach, because the truth is, in the current technology environment we have now, AI is a necessity. However, that's where governance comes in. We need to regulate, guide, direct how AI is used. Because the truth is, if you end up banning everything, staff will go out of their way to use AI to make their work processes faster. So the best approach is not to ban everything outrightly, is to come with good governance to say, where do we need AI? What do we need AI for? And why do we need AI within the organization, and provide the AI tools needed for business operators to carry out their business functions.
What I see here is that the danger is not that staff are trying to do something wrong, because in reality, they are trying to be productive. But if the organization has no policy, no training, no approved tools, and no accountability trail, then useful behavior can become organizational risk. So what is the balance between enabling innovation and protecting the organization? Because as you've made it clear, banning everything is not an option.
Okay. Yeah. So enabling innovation and so what you just described is where we come in, is where governance comes in. Governance is right at the middle, having controls and enabling innovation. That is where governance sits right in the middle of the conversation. Because again, like I said earlier, it is not productive to say we're banning AI. And one of the greatest use cases for AI tools is productivity. So it is clearly deciding, looking at each business function, how can AI enable productivity within this function, and providing the right tools, providing the right controls around those tools to ensure that it supports business, we reduce risk, and we also enhance innovation. Shadow AI basically is that we don't even know what's going on. Is here, we don't know what's going on. We're playing the ostrich, we've buried our head in the sand.
Okay. So now I want to move from technology to leadership. Your book argues that AI governance is not simply a technical problem, it's a leadership crisis. Why?
So AI governance is not a technical problem. It is not a responsibility that sits with the technology team or the vendor. When harm occurs, the organizational leadership cannot simply say, oh, the algorithm did this, or our AI team did this, because AI itself is driving the way business is being conducted, is driving the way business operations. So like every other business decision, governance sits at the right. Governance gives direction. Governance gives leadership. And that is why AI governance is a leadership problem. It lies squarely on the shoulders of leaders within organization. It can't be outsourced.
So leaders often delegate AI governance too quickly to technical teams. Why can't they see it?
Okay, I think the main reason is that AI is being seen as a fully technical solution. Because when you talk about AI, what comes to the mind of the average person is a machine at the end is crunching the data you input into it and is coming out with outputs. But then we understand that before and while the crunching is being done, there are a lot of processes that goes into it. And we need governance to determine these processes. For example, there is a business case. Governance is strong on business case. Why are we bringing in AI? What do we need AI for? Now, what kind of AI do we need? What kind of data do we need to train this AI? What regulatory limitations do we have? Because in some countries, in some jurisdictions, you are not allowed to employ AI in some sectors or to do some certain business processes like employee behavioral monitoring. You can't employ AI to do that. So these are governance decisions. These are not decisions that can be made by the technical team. Then also human oversight. At what point do we need human beings to actually check the decisions that are made by AI, especially for critical decisions, to be able to check and say, okay, this is our right decision, we can go ahead. So again, there are a lot of governance and human interventions or human decision, because again, AI is not trying to take away the human aspect. There must be human review and oversight, and this is where governance comes to play.
Okay, but most leaders do not understand every technical details of AI. But from what you said, they must understand the purpose, accountability, evidence, impact, and oversight for the AI system. There is one question I'm going to ask. What should a board ask before approving AI system? I believe that might help leaders that needs to use AI but doesn't know where to start.
Okay, thank you very much. So again, we are not, the idea of this book or a practical idea, it's not for leaders, business leaders to be AI technology experts. It's for them to understand their role. And one of their role is to understand that there must be a business case. How does AI tie to the strategic objectives of the business? How will AI ensure that the business meets its strategic objectives? First, that must be established. What part of the organization will AI affect? Who are those AI will affect within the organization, and how will AI affect our customers? In the sector we operate, what are the regulations concerning AI? In the jurisdiction, in the geography we operate, what are the regulations around AI? Then ultimately, who is accountable for AI decision? At what point do we need human intervention? That is human in the loop or human on the loop for AI decision. Then if AI goes wrong, how do we shut it down? Who gives the command or the go ahead for it to be shut down? So again, all these decisions, the leaders are supposed to be aware of these decisions. And thankfully, leadership is not done in vacuum. There are people and structures within the organization that must be put in place to ensure that these questions can be answered adequately and people can be responsible for these questions. But ultimately, leadership will be accountable for these decisions.
Is I do not understand technology still acceptable excuse for senior leaders?
Not understanding what technology does is not an excuse for a leader in the world we are now. We might not understand the coding, we might not understand the technical blueprint, but we must really understand what we are trying to achieve with technology within the organization, how technology is being implemented to support the business strategic objectives. And we must be able to pinpoint as a leader or have structures in place within the organization, structures like risk assessment, incidents, monitoring, logging, auditing, that can help us know if our technology or our AI is deviating from the set strategic objectives and either move back or discard or discontinue it in line with our use case in line with our use case. So we're not saying that AI must, we're not saying that a CEO, for example, should understand technology the way a CTO is going to understand it. But then a CEO should understand why they are implementing AI within an organization, what the AI is set out to achieve, and the structures that needs to be put in place to ensure that the AI does exactly what we have implemented it to do.
Okay. So in one word, you do not need to be a data scientist to be accountable for the decisions your organization makes with AI. So that is clear. So I now want us to go now to AI risk. As you've said earlier, there is a lot that the organization that is going on. Majority of staffs are already using AI productivity tools, even though their organizations are saying that they are still making up the guidance or they are still reviewing business cases. So there is a lot of risk that most likely there might be a lot of risk that leaders are currently underestimating. That risk might be in terms of bias, discrimination, data leak, vulnerability. I think there's a lot of them. So I want to hear from you. What are the AI risk or the most important AI risk leaders are currently underestimating?
Okay, yeah, thank you. And I would like to discuss this from three perspectives. So there are the people risk, we have the people risk, we have the process risk, and we have the technology risk. We've discussed some of the people risk and lack of awareness and competence where employees misuse these tools, they misunderstand output, automation bias, or fail to recognize harmful or inaccurate results. Then over-reliance on AI. So staff may accept AI-generated recommendations without sufficient human review or professional judgment. Then insider misuse. Employees or staff may intentionally or accidentally use AI to expose sensitive information, create harmful content, or bypass controls. Now, moving to the process risk that we have. One of them is inadequate governance, where the organization itself failed to deploy AI without defined policies, roles, ownership, and management oversight. Also, we've seen in practice, we've seen process risks that like weak data governance, where data used for AI may be inaccurate, incomplete, outdated, or unlawfully obtained, and therefore they are unsuitable for their intended use. Then processes like lack of approval, where staff use unauthorized public AI tools without security, legal, or privacy and compliance rules. Then moving on to technology risk. Things like lack of explainability. So for example, we're an organization, just for our conversation's sake, we're an organization that have employed AI to help us with staff recruitment, first level vetting of CVs, and for recruitment. So if a CV is discarded as not being suitable for a role, can we explain in non-technical terms why can we challenge the AI system to justify the reason or explain in non-technical terms why that CV was discarded and why others were selected? Also, there is technology risk of model drift, where because AI is trained on data.
So on that one on CV, I would say there should be a legal way to challenge AI decision. In many organizations that does that at the moment, they don't usually provide a legal way to challenge it. What I've seen some organizations write is, as part of the application, they will already say, we are not going to give you a feedback if you don't get to so level of the interview. So with that, they already tell you that we are indirectly saying that we are not going to, you have no way to challenge our decision.
Yes. So again, we need to dimension these issues. There are some legalists put around things to really protect the organization. But looking at it from inside of the organization, as an organization that wants to improve, as an organization that wants to ensure that AI investment provides significant measurable value, we need to work towards ensuring governance. And this governance is the best governance you can have is being accountable to yourself before you are be accountable to others. Is creating structures that internally we can, even if we are not asked by external parties, we can by ourselves explain decisions that are being made by our AI systems.
Accountability by default.
Yes, please. Or we can call it accountability baked in into systems. or accountability by design.
So I would say AI risk from what you're saying is not whether the AI system works. It's about who the AI system works for, who it fails, how one can legally challenge it, or who is accountable when it causes harm. So I would like you to explain. A lot of data scientists like their model to be 99% accurate and all that. And through that, there might be 1% failure, which might cause bias. Why can you say bias is not just technical accident?
Okay, so one of the best practice for AI documentation is a model card. And the model card is supposed to document the model, the limitations. So, because the limitations of the model. So again, AI systems built, are not built in El Dorado. So most times we have the first iteration and we keep working to make it better in subsequent releases. But the thing is that, the good thing is that we should have a model card that states the limitation of these AI systems. What can it do? What can it not do? Where is it failing? So that management and stakeholders know that, okay, this is what the AI can do. These are its limitations. While we keep working to make it better, that helps us in explainability, and that also helps in transparency. Even on the popular AI tools that we use, we see some disclaimer they put that this tool can make errors. Please verify the answer, the output.
I would like you to go further to explain what risk emerge when leaders rely too heavily on vendors.
Okay, so first, I'd like to say, if you don't know where you are going to, all roads look enticing. First, we need to understand the use case for tools we are getting. And like from experience, what we see is that procurement of tools are usually management decisions based on previous relationships or based on other factors that are not tied to the outcome that we're trying to achieve. So most times, technologists, data practitioners, data privacy professionals, cybersecurity professionals are not consulted before some of these tools are procured. They just get implementation orders. And of course, they have to do as they are told. So what I'll say is that for us to know the extent to which AI has been embedded in this tool, there's supposed to be a collaborative cross-functional team that's supposed to do assessment on vendor and third-party tools before we even get to make the decision of procurement.
So what you're saying is that the arm of AI is human, even when it's a mathematical error, because based on what you've said, it's more of judgments by people.
Yes.
And that reinforces that popular marketing saying that sales is made based on emotions.
Yeah, most times. Most time in practice, we see the way these procurements are being done. And most times it is made on other factors that are not related to the business or the problem at hand that we're trying to solve.
Yeah. And then let me go back to your book. In your book, you discuss examples of healthcare, hiring, policing, financial services. Why are these examples important for leaders?
Okay, these are examples that affect our day-to-day life. For example, policing, law enforcement, we've seen the use of AI, and the use of AI can determine either how environments will be risk assessed, how environments will get amount of police that do monitoring or amount of security cover. Also for finance, now all you just need if you want to assess a loan. Previously, if you want to assess a loan, you need to go to a bank or a loan house. You fill out the form, you have meetings with the loan officer, you have loan with the bank manager, and you submit some documents, they're able to vet you, and they can give you a human reason for not providing those loans. We're not saying that system is perfect. But now what we do is you just jump into an application, you feed in some information, the application rules for most times less than a minute, and you get a decision. Now, what are the parameters that drove that decision? And for most organizations, they make profits from granting these loans. So if your AI is rejecting eligible people that is affecting your business, that's affecting revenue. Also, in the other side, if your AI is permitting those who are supposed not to be granted those loans, that is creating legal, regulatory, and other business risk. So AI is governing key aspect of our life. Also in healthcare, in cancer treatment, kudos to AI. Some malignant tissues have been identified by AI tools faster than what human can have, faster than human identification or human intervention. But then again, we need human oversight, because for critical AI services such as healthcare, there is a need to ensure that the AI has made correct decision. Because again, kudos to the speed, but we've also found errors in practice based on other factors that the AI could not process at that point, such as hallucination.
Okay. I think one of the dangerous assumptions in AI is that because the system is mathematical, it must be neutral. But system trained on equal histories and reproduce unequal outcomes. So based on that, I want to ask, why can a system produce discrimination even when nobody intends to discriminate?
Okay, so at this point, I'd like to say the system is neutral. The system is as good as the data in which it is fed, the data in which it's trained on. So where is this data gotten from? What demography is represented in this data? And what is the use case of the data? How was the data gotten? Because again, the AI is going to crunch the data it has, and is going to provide information based on the data. And that's why data provenance, data governance, data security is one of the cardinal aspects in AI governance, to ensure that where are we getting the data from? How did we get the data? What is the life cycle of the data? How many transformations has this data gone through? And what is the use case for the data we are getting? Because again, we are beginning to see some AI systems behave in a way they are not intended to behave, because of the data they are being fed with and the data they are continuously being trained with.
Okay. So I agree with that. So, and that is what some of the examples from your book. But as a leader that is thinking about deploying AI, how should they think about fairness before deploying their system?
Okay, so fairness is basically, does the AI system or the AI tool we are trying to implement, how does it represent demographics that will be affected? How does it affect society? What are the societal consequences of the outcomes of our AI? Because in practice, we've seen AI legal tools that are being fed on data that presupposes that some people from some demography, or some people living in some parts of the country or in some jurisdiction, are criminally minded. But in practice, it's not so. Again, we can't say that system is fair enough. Another example that we have documented in the book was about an AI tool that was created for hiring, and the data it was fed with was predominantly male data. So this AI tool, when it sees any information or any data that has to do with the female gender, it automatically junks the CV. We can't say this is fair. Also, we can't say this is fair. Also, we need to check what demography is our data. Is it balanced enough? Can our AI systems, can it give balanced outcomes that doesn't give grave societal consequences?
Okay. So I think what I would like our listeners or viewers to take from this is that AI does not remove human bias automatically. In fact, because of the speed and the complexity of the AI system, it sometimes scale it. So if the bias is 1, it can be raised to power 10, raised to power 10, raised to power 10. So that's a big challenge. I want to bring us back to the book, and now I want us to talk about the black box problem. Let's talk about it. Why is explainability so important in AI governance?
Yeah, so explainability is important because, again, using the loan application example, if I was to walk into a bank to apply for a loan physically, and I'm being denied the loan, usually I get a letter, or usually I have a conversation with the loan officer to say, okay, you're not being granted this loan because your credit score is not good enough. And most times you get advisory that you need to do X, Y, Z, A, B, C to ensure that your credit score improves. You are talking to a human. You can get an explanation. But for the black box is that people can't really explain what is going on within the AI machine itself, how it is resolving data to provide output or to provide outcome. So really, and most times this doesn't start at the beginning. At the beginning, sometimes we're able to explain how the AI is making decisions, but then as the tool or the solution becomes more complex, as we begin to add a lot of variables into the system, it becomes so complex that we don't have enough documentation. We don't have adequate documentation anymore. We don't know what is happening. And once we get to this stage, we can't really vouch for the outcomes of the system because we don't know exactly what is going on. And really that negates the use case because it negates regulatory requirements, the EU AI Act and other AI regulations in different jurisdictions of the world holds explainability as one of the key foundations of AI governance and responsible use of AI.
Now, in many areas of life, people expect reasons. As you've mentioned, if a loan is denied, if a job application is rejected, or people on benefits, if a benefit decision is made, people should not be trapped by a decision that nobody can explain. So, what does good explanation looks like for ordinary people affected by AI?
Okay, so good explanation. We're not suggesting that you give us a technical blueprint of how the decision was made. The good explanation looks like what are the factors that were considered and how did I fall short of those factors? Because every system is set up with a criteria. Every business outcome has a criteria. So what were the criteria at which I was benchmarked against? And if I fell short, how did I fall short?
So every leaders should ensure that their AI decision is explainable. They should balance performance with explainability. And I think from your submission, it is clear that a decision without explanation is not just a technical problem, it's a governance problem.
Yes.
So we are still going with your book. We want to move to AI ethics versus enforceable governance. Many organizations talk about responsible AI, ethical AI, fairness, transparency. Why is it not enough that they talk about it?
So for things about ethics and responsible use of AI, you must walk your talk. You must be able to show how this is being implemented in practice. So for responsible use of AI, what are the processes you've put in place for fairness, against bias? What are the processes you've put in place to consider the environment? Every organization, apart from AI, has some ethics and governance principles by which they abide. So it's best to ensure that AI also aligns, the use of AI aligns with the ethics that we have already set to benchmark ourselves against as an organization. So practically, you must be able to prove that we have put structures in place to ensure that ethics, fairness, and use of AI in a responsible way. So AI, we don't use AI to harm people. We don't use AI as an organization to spread falsehood. We don't use AI to exploit either our workforce or exploit our customers. And also AI is used looking at the global ecosystem to ensure that we don't harm the environment.
So, yeah, thank you very much. It is clear that almost every organization will say they believe in fairness, accountability, transparency, and trust. But the real question is whether those values are converted into policies, controls, monitoring, evidence, and decision rights. So, based on that, I want you to go one step further to tell us what is the difference between having principle and having governance? Because it looks like many organizations are confused or they misuse those words.
Okay. So principles are what I've said I will do. I am Toluwani, I believe in XYZ principles. That is fine. That can be documented. In fact, most organizations, when you walk into their head offices, you see those principles, core values, they are written and they are being glazed in very, very good and attractive words. But governance is the practice of those principles that you have written. Governance is where the rubber meets the road. And governance, whether an organization is governed responsibly, whether AI is governed responsibly, is a matter of time. It's not something that can be easy because issues will arise. AI systems are not perfect. Technology is not perfect. There will be issues. There might be breaches. There might be other issues that might arise. Now, what differentiates an organization that is just principles, no governance, and an organization that is both principles and governance is how they resolve those issues. Because if you have proper governance and ethics controls in place, you are able to bounce back quicker. You are able to bounce back in a more transparent way than organizations who are just all talk.
AI ethics without governance is like an aspiration. How I would describe it as that. And then, but governance is what turns that aspiration into accountability. Just for us to round out this section, I would like you to tell us, who do you think should own ethical AI within an organization?
So accountability for ethics is a governance function, but the responsibility cuts across the organization. And I'll give some explanation. So for responsibility for ethics, the board has already set some accountability they've set some ethical requirements which they'll be accountable for. But the board members or the decision makers, they are not the data scientists who are going to source for the data. They are not the software developers who are going to write codes. They are not the cybersecurity professionals who are going to do some cybersecurity assessment, architecture assessment. So it is again the responsibility of these stakeholders to ensure that those ethical values are being considered when they are carrying out their function in building AI. So for the data scientists, you ensure that you look for clean data. For the privacy experts, you ensure that the data the data scientists are using meets all our privacy requirements. Then for the developer as well, we ensure that we use secure coding principles. For those who work in cybersecurity, we ensure that we look at things around adversarial attacks, we look at things around model drift and all the risk that comes with AI development. So what I'll say in a nutshell is that accountability for ethics sits with the board and management, but the responsibility is shared around across the different functions within the organization.
Yeah. So let's now move to practical value. Let's look at what good AI governance looks like. So if you can, in maybe a few words, what does good AI governance actually look like inside an organization? I would like to know, where should an organization start? Or what should be in their AI governance framework, as much as you can tell us?
Okay, that's fine. So what does responsible use of AI look like? The first thing, it starts at the board. So there are requirements for the board to be responsible for oversight. AI risk should be understood, reported, and managed as part of enterprise risk. AI risk should not be treated as a side issues. Executives should be responsible for ownership and direction. They must define AI appetite, approve high-risk case uses, and ensure that right governance structures are in place. Also, legal teams must assess regulatory obligations, things like contractual risk, liability exposure, intellectual property issues, and ensure that the organizations have the ability to defend automated decisions. Also, we have a role for privacy teams that must ensure that personal data is used lawfully, fairly, and transparently. They should review data protection impact, conduct DPIAs, data protection impact assessment. They should enforce consent, data minimization, retention, and the respect of individual rights. That is, respect of the rights of the people whose data is being used to train the AI. Also, cybersecurity teams must assess how AI systems can be protected. how data flows through them, and how models can be attacked. Also, how secure sensitive information can be secured. Then we have risk and compliance teams who conduct AI risk assessment, monitor risk, assess risk, and report risk. They should conduct, so AI governance and AI risk should not be in isolation. It should be joined to the wider environment control. Also, we need ethics teams. Who owns ethics in organization? They must keep asking the questions, whether AI system is fair, whether it's proportionate, is explainable, and ultimately is aligned with the organization's values. Technical teams, of course, they have a role to play. They are responsible for building, testing, validating, and monitoring systems. They should not be let alone. And this is where this is a gap we find in practice. These teams should not be left alone to make decisions that carry legal, ethical, or societal consequences. So in summary, the best AI governance happens when these teams work together under clear leadership and accountability.
So I will imagine good AI governance should include stuff like AI inventory, business case, risk assessment, data governance, human oversight, incident response. All those things I mentioned, does that sound right?
Yes. So again, what I've done is to mention functions, but those processes you've mentioned, like the business case, the risk assessment, log monitoring, incident response, vulnerability management, those are processes that are embedded within the functions I've mentioned. So setting up these functions and processes, then they are now assigned with processes that align with their expertise. So again, this is a collaborative approach and they're supposed to work hand in hand.
Okay. So I would summarize this by saying good AI governance starts before deployment and continues after deployment.
Yeah. So AI governance is a journey.
Yeah. And
It's a journey.
And it should be live. So organizations should not say we've deployed the AI model and then they stop, because there might be data drift, there might be new data coming in, feature changes. So it should continue after deployment.
Yes, it's a journey. AI governance ends at the point where we decide we're not using that AI tool. As long as we have deployed that AI system is being used in our business operations, AI governance is an iterative process.
Okay. So now let's talk about procurement and vendor claim. Procurement is one of the most important but under discussed part in AI governance. If the wrong questions were not asked before purchasing an AI system, the organization may inherit risk it does not fully understand. So, and because many organizations would not build this AI system themselves, they will buy them. Well, what should leaders ask vendors before buying AI tools?
Thank you very much. So again, what you find in practice is that most organizations are just users of AI capabilities. They are not developers. They don't develop AI tools because again, a lot of resources and technicalities goes into that. So in traditional IT, there is a control for third party and vendor risk. But the use of AI has made the control of vendor and third party risk more important because these tools are making some automated decisions. So as a leader, if I'm going to get a tool, a vendor, a third party tool with AI capabilities, what are the questions I'm going to ask? Number one, after we've understood our use case, is first trying to get the developer of the tool. What data was used? What data was used to develop this tool? Will our data, because again, this AI tool, they're assessing our data. Will our data be used to continuously train your model? Because at times we might have legal responsibility to ensure that the data we have in organization, our customer data is not used for training purposes. Then also we need to understand the controls around these AI tools.
I know you're still talking, but I want to say, what evidence should vendor provide that will make it easy for leaders to make the right judgment?
Okay, so again, most of the evidences that the vendors will provide might be technical. And the truth is that the leader might not have the capabilities to might not have the technical capabilities to process this information. So again, like we said earlier, when a tool is being processed, especially a tool with their capability, there should be a cross-functional team or within an organization that should approach the vendor selection. So as a leader, what I'll be looking at is the data provenance. Where is data gotten from? What data uses to train? Number two, is there adequate incident and risk management built into your tool? How much of support do you give your tool? So to make sure that for the cross-functional teams you have in your AI governance structure, the legal team do their legal assessment, the IT risk team does their IT risk assessment, the cybersecurity team does their cybersecurity assessment, and the way they give management reports, they're able to give reports based on the assessment of these tools in non-technical terms so that we can make the right decision. Because again, what the leader is concerned with is that they're trying to ensure that the organization meets its strategic objectives. So now with all these metrics and indices you've gotten from your internal team, the question the leader should ask himself is that will they support or impede the organization in meeting its strategic objectives?
Thank you very much. Now, I want to move to Africa's AI movement. This is an important part of this conversation because AI governance is not only about organization, it's also about national capacity, sovereignty, local context, and who gets to shape the system that affects people's lives. Your book discusses Africa's AI movement, not movement. So why is AI governance especially important for African governments, businesses, and institutions?
Okay, so from the African angle, AI governance is not only a global issue, it's a sovereignty issue. Because alluding to the incident that happened, I think a couple of months or a couple of weeks ago, where Claude, an AI tool that is not owned by the government, it's a private business, but the American government just decided that some versions of the tool will be available for only Americans.
Are you referring to Fable 5?
Yes, Fable 5 and Mythos.
All right.
Yes, they made a decision that is only available to Africans. Now, AI is becoming sovereignty issues. Many AI systems used in African markets are built elsewhere. They are trained on foreign data, designed around foreign populations, and optimized for foreign commercial realities. When these systems are deployed in African contexts without proper adaptation and governance, they may make decisions about African people using assumptions that do not reflect African realities. So there's this AI tool I use. There's one of these AI tools for pictures that I play around with. And what I've discovered with that tool is that when you put the picture of a person of color, it only gives one tone of air type. And that is because that is the limitation of the data it is being trained with. By just using it to buttress the fact that these tools are trained on foreign data around foreign context, but they are deployed in African context. And also there is the risk of algorithmic. Africa, it's a place where data, because of weak data governance structures, data is being ferried out, data is being gotten without any form of governance. So Africa has become a market where AI systems are deployed, our data is extracted, and decisions are made without enough African oversight, without African data are being used. For some African businesses as well, trust, compliance, and data protection is being managed by tools that are developed without African context. So it behoves on us to wake up and smell the coffee, see what is happening, and ensure that, number one, we take AI as sovereignty issues. We begin to develop capabilities where we can. And in places where we don't have these capabilities, we need to ensure that we build governance structures before we adapt AI into critical functions. And a key question should be, if the country that is giving us AI tools that we use for governance decides not to provide this tool to us again, what do we do? How do we ensure that the data that they are feeding into these tools that are making decisions for us are Afrocentric, they are African data?
I agree with you. Africa should not only consume AI, Africa must help govern and shape it. It is currently failing. There are arguments that infrastructure is still a challenge for Africa, and the fact that many infrastructure in Africa were not built by Africans themselves. Recently, we heard about the contracts for the Apapa ports that is awarded to the British government. So technically, it means that all the data that goes into that port is not managed by the port, or it will be managed by a system that is not made by the ports, a system that is made for elsewhere and replicated there. So I would like to ask, how do we balance innovation, sovereignty, investment, infrastructure, and protection in this case?
Okay, so first is to have, so we're beginning to see some jurisdiction of the world, like the EU, there's the EU AI Act, some other countries have got AI Acts. Currently, as we speak, as the time this book was written, Rwanda is already drafting an national AI regulation. South Africa is doing something. Nigeria currently too is doing something about an AI regulation. So first thing is to do this uniquely and differently, because what we find in practice is that some of these regulations we build, they are a copy and paste of what we have in other jurisdictions. At this point, we're not saying we should reinvent the wheel, although yes, of course, we can always build on what other people have done, but this should be adapted to our use case and not adopted. Then again, as Africans, we need to do things differently, because most times the breakdown of governance in Africa is not lack of governance documentation. Enforcement of these regulations needs to be put in place where we have appropriate structures that can operationalize what we have in the governance document. Then also we need to begin to empower African institutions, such as universities, to build talent, regulators to do their job in regulating AI processes, AI outcomes. And very importantly, Africa is not short of talent. Africa is not short of bright minds. But we must be able to enable systems where African can build talent, research capacity, data sets, policy, and governance framework that we need to shape our AI future.
So I want us to bring this back to what citizens needs to do. AI governance is not only a boardroom issue. It affects whether people can access opportunities, service, justice, healthcare, finance, employment. You've mentioned the HR use case quite a lot. This book is not only for executives or policymakers. It is also for the citizens. So my question is, why should ordinary people, like ordinary citizens, care about AI governance?
Okay, so again, this book is a wake-up call, or is a jolt to the average person to understand that AI is part of our lives. AI is going to make decisions on our behalf. So knowing that, we need to understand how AI is driving our lives. For example, we find that most of the young people in Africa and outside Africa use a lot of social media. And there's something that's called algorithm bubble, where based on the kind of people you follow or the kind of news you read, kind of comments you like, your social media feeds begin to give you more information around the things you like, around the things you watch, around the adverts you look at. Therefore, you are now tied into a bubble, and all you get is everything around those things. You don't get other things. So they need to understand that there are things like algorithmic bubble. They need to also understand that AI systems are not perfect. AI systems can make mistakes. So even in our day-to-day life, because we found cases, there's this guy who is suing one of the AI tools. This happened this week because he asked the AI tool he asked the AI tool a medical question, and he gave it an answer, implemented the answer, and it almost cost him his life. But then there's a disclaimer on the AI to say that you must verify. So we need to understand, the average person on the street should be AI literate. And when we're saying AI literate, we're not saying AI literate in the capacity of a software developer or a data scientist. We're saying AI literate to understand how AI affects our day-to-day life, and the guardrails of being verification and preventing automation bias that we can employ.
So what rights or expectations should people have when AI affects them?
Yeah, so first, for example, we should know that the average person should be aware that AI guzzles data, AI lives on data consumption. So the average person needs to take data privacy concerns serious. When you are signing up for a product, when you are buying a service that has to do with your data, they give you a lot of fine print, at times maybe 30-page fine print. And embedded in some of these fine prints is where you willingly surrender your data to be used for AI training. So the average person needs to be aware of their personal responsibility for their data privacy. In some cases, insist if you want to ensure that your data is not used for training purpose, if that is what you want, and also be careful how we put in our data, because at times we put privately identifiable information in places where they are not supposed to be, either for fun purposes or for some other, or for fun purposes, or just for jokingly. So we need to understand that our data is the gold, and as much as we can protect it as much as possible, especially data of infants, data of minors, because we've seen what some bad AI tools are being developed where they take children's pictures and they do all sort of unexplicable and unprintable things with them. So we need to understand privacy and try as much as possible to protect our privacy, that of our loved ones, as much as possible.
Okay. So you mentioned automated decision previously. How can citizens ask better questions about automated decisions?
So basically, I'm filling a form. Okay, so an example, I'm filling a form where I want to access loan.
Okay, because let me give an example. You want to install an application on Google iStore. They just put it in front of you. If you click no, then you don't have app. So, so sometimes people just click yes, yes, yes without even reading. So yeah, it's in that context.
Yeah, so I understand that. I mean, at times some of these tools you just need to click, especially when you're using free tools. But what we are saying here is that some of them we can't control for now, but the ones we can control, we should control them. So for example, I'm trying to install a game, and the game is asking for access to my contacts. What does the game need? What does the game need access to my contacts for? You are trying to fill out a form for a loan, and they are asking for your genotype. We need to be able to, we need to start questioning this decision, because these decisions, because these are data that is not needed to process what you are going for. If I'm applying for a loan, I don't think for example, this is just a use case. I don't think my genotype or my sexual orientation is important for you to grant me the loan. The questions to be asked should be around my creditworthiness, my ability to pay back. So again, some of these tools surreptitiously ask for other types of data that they want to use for some processing outside of the services they're supposed to render. So again, when there's a lot in situations where we should not give out information that is not useful for the service or the product use case that we are trying to employ at the moment.
Okay. So I think it's what we are saying here is that as part of the rule for data collection, you should only collect data that you need for a particular activity. So,
yeah.
And if you've collected data for a particular goal, if you need to use it for something else, you need to go back to gain consent on that particular data. And
yes.
To wrap this segment up, what should people do when they suspect that an AI system has treated them unfairly?
Yeah, so it depends on the jurisdiction which you are. In some jurisdiction, there's some legal, there's some regulatory, we have some regulatory and legal processes where you can report and you can seek redress. So if that is available, please exploit that opportunity. But in places, especially some jurisdiction in Africa where you don't have processes, or you don't have channels through which you can report or you can make complaint, it might just be discontinuing the use of that services. But again, I know in some African countries, even where there's no AI, national AI framework, a lot of them have got data privacy regulations where you can actually report to the regulator if you feel your data has been unjustly used or is being used for the use case in which you have not granted consent. So again, it's a call on our regulator to do better, a call on our regulators to ensure that they set up mechanisms through which people can make reporting, and also to ensure that when people make these reports, they are being taken serious. They don't play too much to the gallery on the side of the big corporations.
So thank you very much. Now we want to move to the leadership segment. Responsible AI is not about slowing innovation. It's about making innovation safe enough to scale. And that is a goal of so many leaders and many businesses. Businesses generally want to get the best out of this technology because lots of people believe that we are currently within that wave where people can make money or make maximum use with AI. At some point, it's going to reach its peak and things might stall. So if a leader is listening and their organization is already using AI or about to start dealing with AI, what should they do within the next 30 days? I would appreciate if you can give a simple list.
Okay. So in summary, final advice to leaders will be simple. First, do not wait for regulation, scandal, or failure before you govern AI. AI is already in your organization, whether through formal projects, vendor platform, productivity tools, or employment use. The question is no longer whether your organization is using AI. The question is whether you know how it is being used, who is accountable, and what controls are in place. Leaders do not need to become data scientists, but as a leader, you must be AI literate enough to ask the right questions. Leaders must understand the difference between AI that advises and AI that decides. Leaders must know when human oversight is required. Leaders must demand evidence of fairness, explainability, security, and compliance. The organizations that will succeed with AI are not necessarily the ones that will simply adopt the fastest, but organizations that will succeed with AI are the ones that governs it the best. We've said earlier in this conversation that AI is powerful, but power without governance is a big risk. The responsibility of leadership is that AI serves the people, customers, strengthens the organization, and it supports trust rather than quietly reshaping decision in ways nobody can control or explain.
So what is the first mistake a leader should avoid?
So the first mistake a leader should avoid is that AI should not be deployed because your next door neighbor or your competitors are implementing AI. That should not be the first use case.
It should not be a nice to have. And then, what is one question everybody should ask?
The first and the most important question is, what is the business case? What is the use case for AI within our organization? Why?
And what is a sign that an organization is not ready to deploy AI?
A lot of factors can show whether an organization is ready to use AI. Because again, we need to walk back from the answer. What are we trying to achieve and how are we trying to achieve it? So the question is not whether we are not ready to employ AI, is what type of AI are we ready to handle? And that is dependent on the structures, the governance structures we have in place within the organization.
Toluwani, this is going to be my last question. If listeners remember one thing from this conversation, what should it be?
One thing I'd like you to remember from this conversation is that AI is here to stay. AI is no longer in the future. AI is our present reality, and we need to govern AI. We need to control AI before AI start making decisions that will have harmful impact on humanity and the society.
That's a powerful place to end because this conversation reminds us that AI governance is not anti-innovation. It is pro-accountability, pro-trust, and pro leadership. If you are joining me, if you are watching this podcast, I want to request something from you. If you watch any of my video more than once, I want to encourage you to subscribe. If you subscribe, it will help me reach out to many people. It will also help the show. It will help people know what we do and contribute. And it will also help us to get more speakers, because the bigger we become, the more we are going to attract excellent speakers like Toluwani. Toluwani, thank you for joining me on the Future State. Well, today we have discussed why AI governance matters, why leaders cannot outsource accountability, why shadow AI is already inside many organizations, and why the question is no longer whether AI will shape our institution, but whether we will govern it wisely. So for everyone listening, Toluwani's book is Governing AI Before It Governs Us. The book is already available on Amazon. I'm going to be putting the link to the book in the description. Please, I want to encourage you to check out that book and buy it, read it. I also want to add that if this conversation have added value, as I said earlier, please subscribe to the Future State on YouTube. Follow the podcast on Spotify, Apple, and your choice platform. The most important one, share this episode with someone thinking about AI, leadership, governance, cybersecurity risk, or the future of work. Until next time, keep asking not what technology can do, but what kind of future it will help us create. Thank you.
Thank you very much.